There was a reason the Varnock called themselves the apex species, with physique engineered by evolution for war, a skeletal structure denser than most alloy composites, and reflexes capable of tracking plasma bolts mid-flight. Their dominance in galactic affairs was absolute. No species had ever withstood a direct assault by the Varnock military, and lived to tell the tale. They were the hammer in every interstellar dispute, the enforcers of order, and the ones whose voice echoed the loudest within the Galactic Council. And then there were the humans. They arrived late to Galactic stage, quiet, strange, biologically unremarkable. Their worlds were modest in number, their ships functional but uninspiring. Their ambassadors rarely spoke during council sessions, always seated in the back, always listening, always watching. Most assumed they were just being respectful. Some thought they were timid. The Varnock laughed, calling them the backseat diplomats. To a Varnock, presence meant assertion, dominance, force. A species that chose to observe rather than speak must surely lack the strength to lead, let alone challenge. When a Varnock counselor once remarked that humanity was a species of followers, the human representative only smiled and responded, "Leaders who speak too soon often don't finish their sentence." The room had chuckled, the Varnock snarled, but nothing came of it. Over the decades, humans maintained their pattern. They contributed to diplomatic discussions with quiet efficiency, supported military efforts with logistics and healing corps, and politely declined offers to lead task forces. They trained in isolation, ran simulations no one else understood, and requested no assistance. Even their weapons manufacturing data was classified. Cultural reasons, they said. Other species began to mimic human mannerisms, some out of admiration, some mockingly. They believed the humans to be a pacifist people, wise perhaps, but not dangerous. The humans never corrected the misconception. If anything, they encouraged it. And so the myth of human gentleness persisted. Until the duel, Varnock Prime held a commemorative celebration for the unification of the Surik systems. Delegates from across the quadrant attended. As tradition demanded, there was to be a ceremonial trial of strength, a demonstration of cultural honor. A Varnock challenger would engage in unarmed combat with a chosen representative from another species. It was always symbolic, mostly choreographed, a way to display pride without bloodshed. This time, the Varnock warrior selected a human. The invitation was issued publicly on the council floor. The Varnock warrior, Commander Krothax, 600 pounds of muscle and bone, made his challenge with a smirk. The human ambassador declined gently, citing cultural differences and offering his respects. Krothax insisted. The ambassador again declined. Then Krothax accused the human of cowardice, loudly, repeatedly, theatrically. The chamber grew tense. Varnock pride was a volatile thing. Other species waited to see if the human would retreat further or bite back. A day later, Earth Command responded. They would provide a combatant, not an ambassador, but a member of their auxiliary diplomatic security force. A non-lethal only duel. Krothax accepted with a roar of laughter. No human could match him in a contest of strength. The duel was held on neutral grounds. Observers from every major power attended. The human arrived last. Average height, lean, no ornamentation, no ceremonial armor. Krothax looked him over and asked if he needed time to prepare. The human replied, "I already did." When the duel began, Krothax moved first, fast, precise, predictable. A crushing blow meant to end it immediately. The human ducked, rolled, and struck a pressure point. Krothax stumbled. The human didn't stop. Every movement was calculated. Clinical, he wasn't fighting for glory. He was neutralizing a target. Krothax landed 3 hits. None effective. The human landed 17. All decisive. In under 2 minutes, the Varnock commander lay on the ground, conscious but unable to move, paralyzed, not permanently, but enough to end the duel. Medical staff rushed in. The human stepped back, silent. Observers were speechless. No cheers. No protests. Just silence. The footage went viral across every known network. Species that had mocked humanity now rewatched the duel in slow motion, analyzing frame by frame. The human had never shown aggression, only response, precision without rage, efficiency without ego. It was not strength in the traditional sense. It was threat assessment and removal. The Council attempted to move on, to downplay the event, but the galaxy doesn't forget what it fears. Varnock pride was wounded. Their narrative, that strength defines worth, had been questioned. They responded by demanding answers. Was the duel rigged? Was the human enhanced? Were they trained in secret war arts? Earth responded only once. Our personnel are trained for survival, nothing more. That answer only raised more questions. An independent panel of xenopsychologists published a study on human conflict behavior. They noted a pattern. Humans avoided escalation until every other option was exhausted. But when forced into a corner, they responded with complete and overwhelming force. Not rage, not chaos. Cold logic, complete termination of threat. The term threshold species was coined to describe them, non-aggressive by nature, but catastrophic in response. Some council members argued that humans had simply evolved differently, that their violence was conditional, that they were, at their core, peaceful. Others weren't so sure. One Varnock scholar compiled centuries of human history. Wars fought not for conquest, but for survival. Internal conflicts that pushed their species to the brink. Events where humans turned entire continents into fire just to end tyranny. The scholar noted that humans didn't love war, but they understood it better than anyone. Their restraint wasn't weakness. It was containment, and that terrified the Varnock. A secret summit was held among the warrior clans of the Varnock. They debated whether the duel was a fluke, whether the human was unique, whether Earth posed a threat. Ultimately, they agreed that humanity should be monitored more closely. Quietly, no need to provoke. But the seed of doubt had been planted. In the following months, human military contracts were scrutinized. Their encryption broke every known decryption AI. Their training exercises were conducted on deep space platforms that jammed surveillance. Their diplomatic missions traveled with no escorts and never encountered trouble. Rumors surfaced of human operatives ending pirate rings alone, of colonies surviving attacks without calling for help, of ships disappearing after targeting human trade routes. No proof, no admissions, but the galaxy began to whisper. Some species started adopting human methods, strategic withdrawal, patience, surveillance. Others dismissed it as fear-mongering. But no one challenged another human to a duel. Not again. And through it all, the humans said nothing. They remained at the back of the chamber, observing, listening. One Varnock elder, disillusioned and thoughtful, finally asked aloud, "What they sit in the back not because they're beneath us, but because they're above the need to prove otherwise?" No one answered. But from that day forward, the back row in every council meeting was always treated with a little more respect and a lot more caution. The duel was over, but its consequences had just begun to unfold. What was once dismissed as an amusing display turned into a catalyst for a quiet kind of panic. Krothax's defeat was reviewed, analyzed, slowed, dissected by every military and intelligence agency across the council worlds. The footage was undeniable. The human never acted in anger. Every move was defensive, restrained, and surgical. Yet the outcome was total incapacitation. No theatrics, no cruelty, just efficiency. For the Varnock High Command, the implications were alarming. One of their decorated commanders had been rendered helpless in public. Their warrior image, upheld for centuries, had taken a blow. Some called it a fluke. Others called it an anomaly. But beneath the surface, key leaders began to worry that it was neither. A covert directive was issued to assemble a team for reconnaissance. Their objective, Earth, not the polished data presented in council reports. The real Earth, the hidden layers. Varnock operatives, disguised through biotech infiltration suits, were sent to observe human military installations, academic institutions, and civilian behavior. Their first discovery was unsettling. Human military academies did not train just for combat. They trained for collapse. Courses taught cadets how to survive without command, operate alone, destabilize economies, and manipulate social structures. Warfare was only one component. Their focus was systems failure. How to endure when everything around them breaks. More alarming were the simulations. Human instructors regularly ran crisis scenarios involving multi-front invasions, orbital EMP strikes, plague outbreaks, and betrayal by allied species. Cadets were expected to succeed under conditions designed to destroy them psychologically. Failure was common, and failure meant repeating the exercise until survival became instinct. One operative embedded in a university reported a lecture where students debated historical extinction-level threats, not alien invasions, human-made threats, global warming, nuclear conflict, resource wars. And despite the grimness, students laughed, joked, and discussed with morbid sort of confidence. It wasn't denial. It was familiarity. The Varnock collected footage. They gathered documents. One operative, a veteran with decades of field experience, submitted his report with a single line. They trained for the end because they've lived through it. Meanwhile, back in the Galactic Council, discussions shifted, not openly, but subtly. Proposals that once dismissed human input now requested feedback. Delegates previously dismissive began citing Earth precedents. The humans never pressed their advantage. They offered calm, concise insights. Never arrogant, never assertive, just aware. This restraint only deepened the mystery. The Varnock High Strategist ordered a classified historical dig into humanity's origin record. What they uncovered did not comfort them. The first surprise was the diversity of conflict. Humanity had not known a single unifying war, but countless simultaneous ones, civil, ideological, economic. Empires rose and fell within centuries. Entire generations grew up in ruins, rebuilt, and then watched it burn again. The second surprise was the casualty numbers. Tens of millions, hundreds of millions, on their own soil, often by their own hands. The third was a cycle. After every devastation, they rebuilt, always faster, stronger, more adaptive. No species had ever shown such stubborn insistence on existence. But there was more. In one conflict, humans used fire to burn their enemies in trenches. In another, they dropped bombs that turned cities to vapor. In yet another, they developed weapons designed not to destroy armies but to traumatize survivors. They had studied pain, measured it, engineered it, not because they enjoyed it, but because they wanted to understand it and make it an option when all others failed. A Varnock war historian made a private declaration. They do not love war. They've simply made peace with it in ways we cannot comprehend. The tipping point came when a Varnock infiltrator witnessed a human memorial service. It wasn't for soldiers. It was for victims of a collapsed mining station. Hundreds lost in an accident. No violence, just grief. And yet the ceremony carried the same weight as any military remembrance. Children attended. Veterans saluted. The names were recited, not because of glory, but because they had mattered. That recognition of civilian death, personal, communal, sacred, was something the Varnock had never practiced. In their culture, only warriors received honor. The infiltrator returned shaken. A hypothesis formed among the Varnock. Humans did not value death differently. They valued life more, not sentimentally. Strategically, every life lost was a scar, a lesson, and that lesson was never wasted. They learned, evolved, and hardened. From a strategic perspective, that was dangerous. The Council's intelligence coalition took notice. Data points began connecting. Human ship designs were minimalistic but absurdly resilient. Their hulls were reinforced for micrometeorite strikes that other species ignored. Their life support systems were over-engineered to survive total power loss. Their ships carried redundant backups, physical manuals, and even low-tech tools. Not because they lacked technology, but because they never trusted it fully. Paranoia? No. Pattern recognition. In private, some began calling humans contingency creatures, built not for dominance, but for survival in the worst possible conditions. They didn't conquer with brute force. They endured until their enemies wore themselves down. Then they ended it. One Varnock general, skeptical of the growing concern, dismissed it as paranoia. To prove his point, he authorized a covert operation, provoke a human colony in the Outer Rim, a false flag attack, small, surgical, just enough to test their reaction time and retaliation patterns. It was a mistake. The colony did not respond with calls for aid. Within 12 hours, the attackers were eliminated, their ships gone, their data wiped. No public statement, no protest of the Council, just silence. Weeks later, the General's command ship experienced a systems failure, life support disabled, emergency oxygen deployed. Investigation revealed it wasn't a malfunction. It was a warning, a trace of Terran coding found in the diagnostics. Only the General survived. No accusation was made. No admission followed. But the message was clear. A quiet doctrine began spreading within Council intelligence circles. Do not corner the humans. They will not roar. They will remove you. The Varnock tried to reframe the narrative. They funded propaganda campaigns across neutral worlds, painting humans as cold, mechanical, emotionless. But the footage of that duel resurfaced. Not just the fight, but what came after. The human combatant kneeling beside his fallen opponent, ensuring he was stable. Calling medics, stepping back, compassion, not weakness, control mercy. The narrative failed. Some younger Varnock officers began questioning their teachings. If humanity represented a new kind of strength, one rooted not in domination but precision, patience, and resilience, then what did that mean for their own culture? The silence around humanity's capabilities did not last. It couldn't. Rumors turned to stories. Stories into data, and data into classified briefings quietly circulating among the leadership of major civilizations. The Council, once so comfortable with human compliance, had begun to worry, not because humans had changed, but because everyone now understood what had always been there. The tipping point came during a high-stakes diplomatic crisis. A trade war between two allied species, the Brechtel and the Yulari, escalated into border skirmishes. Fleets mobilized. Treaties frayed. The Council scrambled to avoid a total collapse of interstellar stability. As both sides postured, the humans remained silent, observing, listening, sitting in the back. That changed when a third party, a shadow power from the neutral zones, launched an anonymous strike, blaming it on the humans. The Brechtel intercepted a falsified message packet carrying Terran identifiers. It was crude but believable. The Yulari demanded sanctions. The Council hesitated. Human representatives requested access to the transmission. Within hours, they decrypted it, traced its path, exposed the fabricator, and returned a report with zero fanfare. The response was clinical, a single page of technical refutations, signed by a mid-level analyst, not even a diplomat. It contained everything needed to expose a deception. No dramatics, no threats, just irrefutable facts. The Shadow Powers networks were dismantled within a week. No war, no trials, no vengeance, just precision. That event shattered the last illusions. The other species no longer saw humans as simply strange or stubborn. They were precise, surgical, and frighteningly restrained. It wasn't that humans were unpredictable. It was that their logic operated on a scale the rest of the galaxy had never needed to understand. But not everyone feared that. Some sought to exploit it. A new alliance, the Zarkali Coalition, proposed a radical shift in military doctrine. Inspired by human resilience, they began adopting similar strategies. Decentralized command, autonomous units, adaptive logistics. Their ships were overhauled to mimic Terran redundancy and defensive systems. Their officers studied Terran crisis psychology. They wanted to become what they feared. They misunderstood the core. They mimicked the outcomes, not the origin. In their first deployment of this new doctrine, the Coalition launched an aggressive peacekeeping campaign against a disputed sector. They expected overwhelming success. Instead, they encountered resistance, not from a fleet, but from isolated, scattered human observers embedded across the systems. The humans didn't attack. They vanished, disabled communications, altered logistics chains, weaponized misinformation. Within days, Coalition ships were lost in friendly fire incidents caused by manipulated IFF signals. Stations failed to resupply. Mutinies broke out. Paranoia spread. Entire squadrons turned on each other, thinking they had been infiltrated. By the time Council peacekeepers arrived, the coalition was in disarray. The humans had done nothing overt. No fleet movement. No declaration. Just disruption. And still no statements. No demands. Just silence. An emergency session was called. The council chamber was tense. Representatives argued over response protocols. The humans, again, sat quietly. One delegate asked them directly, "Why do you keep letting us underestimate you?" The human reply was simple, "Because it's safer." The words echoed long after the session ended. Meanwhile, the Varnock High Command descended into ideological conflict. One faction demanded a shift toward Terran strategy, arguing that refusing to adapt was suicide. Another clung to pride. They believed humanity's methods were dishonorable, cowardly, even. They began to push for proof that humans could be broken like anyone else. Their opportunity came with the Sarant incident. A Terran deep space survey vessel, civilian-operated, was seized by Sarant mercenaries under Varnock sponsorship. The crew was taken hostage. The Varnock publicly denied involvement, expecting the humans to request negotiations. They didn't. No message came. No ships were seen mobilizing. For 2 days, nothing happened. Then, the station holding the hostages experienced a sudden cascade failure. Gravity fields collapsed. Internal systems melted down. The attackers died. The hostages were recovered, unharmed. The station's black box was missing. Surveillance logs were wiped. No trace of intrusion. No explanation offered. But every analyst knew the humans had acted, and no one saw it happen. After that, the doctrine changed. Quietly, privately, every major power began revising their assumptions. Human assets were no longer treated as passive. Colonies were watched with deference. Their fleets, small, minimal, were tracked as if they were superweapons. What once looked like underdevelopment was now understood as calculated ambiguity. Diplomatic advisors coined a phrase, "If a human sits in the back, make sure your front is clean." Then came the Rask Dominion crisis. The Rask, a militant theocracy on the edge of council space, launched a genocidal campaign against a pre-FTL species. The council hesitated, citing jurisdictional constraints. Protesters erupted across member worlds. The humans issued a single communication: "We will act independently." 1 week later, Rask command nodes began going silent. Surveillance stations glitched. Planetary networks collapsed. The Rask attempted to retaliate, targeting nearby Terran outposts. They found them empty. Every strike failed. Eventually, the Rask homeworld suffered a catastrophic infrastructure failure. Power plants shut down. Orbital elevators collapsed. Communication ceased. There was no invasion. No ships in orbit. No visible attack. And yet the Rask surrendered unconditionally. No formal demand had ever been made. Human representatives issued a statement to the council. The matter is resolved. That marked the final shift. No longer were humans considered a curiosity. They were now a permanent variable in every equation: military, political, economic. And yet, they never expanded their territory, never claimed spoils, never installed puppet regimes. They returned to their quiet observation. The sitting in the back wasn't deference. It was patience. It was a place where decisions are made when noise fails, where control is held, not through force, but through understanding of when to apply it and when not to. The final revelation came when a council intelligence leak exposed a Terran internal directive. It wasn't meant for war. It was contingency planning in the event of total galactic collapse. It contained protocols for surviving in the void without trade, without allies, without planets. It included plans for societal cohesion in deep space generational vessels, psychological conditioning for long-term social stability, cultural preservation in the face of extinction. It was over 1,000 years long. One council elder asked aloud, why would they plan for that? The human response was not public, but the records eventually surfaced. Because we never assume we'll be saved. Not a threat, a fact,